air signs Libra, Aquarius and Gemini. Welcome to the blue super full moon in Pisces. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Libra rising, welcome to your horoscope for the super blue full moon in Pisces. This is happening on the 31st of August at 11:37 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. Either side of that though, the moon's going to be really big. From our perception, it's going to appear massive, bigger than normal. The reason it's called a supermoon is because there's 2 points on the moon's orbit around the Earth. One is called the lunar perigee, which is closest to the Earth, and one's called the lunar apogee, which is furthest away from the Earth in its orbit around. And so when it is closer, it appears bigger. And so when we think about the moon and all of the lunar possibilities, our emotions, our feeling, when we think about a Pisces full moon and in our powers of intuition can be heightened at this time as well, our empathy. And so we might be feeling extra specially sort of sensitive at this moon. There is something to sort of talk about here where we're focusing in on your sixth house, which is in Hellenistic astrology, it was the house of sort of like slavery, the grind, repetition, sort of areas in life that we feel an obligation to, I suppose is a good way to think about it. It also is the house of our physical self, our body, our health. And so there's a full moon that's occurring, a full supermoon that's occurring. So there might be a bunch of feelings that need to move around this time for you in regard to your health, your physical well-being. The sun is in Virgo, which is your 12th house of the unconscious world, the hidden chambers of our psyche. And Mercury has stationed retrograde in there too, the day after we entered Virgo season. So things might feel like they're kind of a bit crossed. Wires might be crossed. There might be sort of bits of information that you're gleaning in your intuition that you may be incorrect, or that it may be worth going over what it is that you think that you know. Because we don't wish this to inform your responsibilities, your sort of obligations here on planet Earth. We are going to kind of allow ourselves this full moon to go with the flow, as it were, and to feel it out, to get in tune with some of our sort of more psychic, intuitive kind of parts of ourselves, and ask ourselves some questions and really take time in giving those answers as well. It's going to be a lot for everyone, I reckon. You know that when there's a full moon, police stations put on extra staff, hospitals put on extra staff as a matter of routine. It's just what sort of happens and occurs around a full moon. People get heightened, their emotional bodies get triggered. And I'm probably giving this advice to everyone, is to sort of, if you can, lay low. There's no need to sort of be so kind of available at this full moon. If you've got plans, go to it. But maybe just keep in mind that things are kind of, people are feeling that they're at their limit, maybe, and that there needs to be some sort of break. There needs to be a kind of moment for us to sort of let it out. So take it in the best way that you can. I think because it's the sixth house, I think I'd really like for you to kind of be really not health conscious, but just be really kind of mindful as what you're ingesting and what you're kind of taking in. Pisces does sometimes have a propensity to dissociate because things are feeling too raw, things are feeling too real, and their empathy is, insurmountable, so they can take on the energy of those around them, and they can feel really overwhelmed by that. Kind of has a kind of feeling of like burnout maybe, and this size of this moon is just, it's like it's an emphasis, it's an extra dose of that level of intensity. So be as gentle as you can, and if you're doing some lovely inner work at this time too, if you're kind of wanting to commune with your ancestors or with your guides, if you're a spiritual person and this is you like to punctuate your months with a bit of an audience with the power of the moon, then if you're reading tarot, if anything like that, just make sure that you clear the space and that you're extra specially sort of intentional with what questions you're asking and who you wish to make contact with as well. That would be a really great thing to do, because we don't need to scare you. We don't need to be put through anything. Another bit of advice is, just go easy, or just be, not go easy, I'm not going to limit you, do what you want, but like just be intentional with everything that you're ingesting in order to see the light, Sometimes there's this feeling of like just willing and wanting for something to a feeling to stop, maybe. You're wanting that relief from such pressure. And in my experience, I know that sometimes to overindulge with the sheer motivation to find relief never really works, because you sort of come off the back of that feeling just as lost and just as empty and just as anxious. So go gently with what you're doing, what strategies you have in place to find that relief. The moon loves Pisces, and in fact in the tarot it's the moon card that does speak to the energy, or the sort of the picture, the story of Pisces. There's something that's emerging from the depths here. Can't help it, they can't resist. It's the full moon. There's two creatures here that are baying and howling at the moon too. Our wilder parts can be stirred by the moon. Our sort of more primal animal instincts can be stirred at a full moon. So this is kind of where we're going, and this is not just you, this is kind of everyone. These readings are kind of they have a similar kind of thematic rhythm I'm finding with these Pisces full moon readings. So we're all feeling it in different parts of our life. And so in that way, just register that when you're interacting with other people. And I think that Mercury retrograde is really the offer to examine, or to sort of redefine or revise the information that we think that we're receiving. And if there's miscommunications or cross wires, then you can also relax into that and maybe have a bit of a chuckle and not take it to heart too much if you misunderstood, or if you were misunderstood as well. So that's that. Now, we might go on a little journey actually with Neptune, I think. Libra rising. Yeah, I mean, they're all coming out for everyone, but I just would be interested to hear your opinion on some dates too. So for the purposes of this reading, the King of Cups will be representing Neptune. So Neptune is the planet that does bring with it a grand illusion. This is where we get our imagination. This is where we kind of develop a relationship with sort of magic too, and mystery. All of these lovely sort of unknowable things occur with Neptune. And it's really nice that, I don't know, this King of Cups in particular, sitting on a clamshell throne, it's kind of perfect as a pictorial of that kind of idea. In the mythology, Neptune was a great mystery and a great power too. There were three gods that resided over the lands of, or the palaces of the earth. So there was the god of the sky, the god of the earth, the god of the sea. Neptune was the god of the sea, everything that was a mystery. And in that way, the planet Neptune has been residing in Pisces since I think about 2012. So it's over a decade now that they've been lingering in Pisces. And when it comes to repetition, the rhythm of life, I get images of like people building pyramids and stuff like that too. Whenever I think about the sixth house, I get that kind of sort of almost like a trance that one would have had to have gotten into to be able to submit and to go through with such arduous labor to accomplish something like that with no, sort of technological force or steam power or anything like that. Like this is hand on rock, on back kind of feeling. The sixth house, huge, like that's, and, of course, subjugation too, that's attached to that, a certain group of people or, like any hierarchy, there's some people that benefit from the golden glow of the gods and some people that are there to act in service. If this is how you have been feeling in regard to your own lot in life, and if there was something that started in 2012 that you can pinpoint for yourself and that we're going to carry through until 2025, but is there a different way of doing things that has sort of been slowly growing inside of you, then this full moon might be the one to kind of remember that evolution in your daily practices, your daily rhythm, your relationship to your health as well, if there's been different ways that you've been healing yourself that have something a little bit more to do with sort of the unknowable. Neptune is an outer planet, so we don't always remark upon them. The energy is kind of slow or moving. I would put down Neptune's entry into Pisces as the growing interest in the esoteric as a culture, as the sort of gateways are sort of opening for different people over the last decade. There's been a sort of greater emphasis or a greater sort of feeling of like legitimacy to some of the more magical parts of life. When an outer planet forms exact pairing or aspect to other planets, that's when we start to talk about them. And there's one that's coming up a week after this full moon, on the day that Mercury retrograde will join the sun. So a moment of clarity. Further to that story, or that sort of idea of like, okay, so if things have been a bit murky and I've been getting the picture wrong, I've been getting it messed up in my mind, I've misunderstood the assignment as far as I can see it. There will be a moment of clarity on that Kazemi day. Also on that same day, the asteroid Athena will be forming an exact opposition with Neptune. And so I've got, for the purposes of this reading, I have the Queen of Swords for Athena. But Athena was the goddess of wisdom and of strategy. And one of the ancient stories of how how Athens was named was a sort of meeting of the minds or a competition between Neptune and Athena. And so Neptune stamped down their trident. There was a fount of water, but it was salt water, so it was kind of not that impressive, seeing as how they were surrounded by salt water, whereas Athena planted a seed and an olive tree grew before everyone's eyes. And so there was food, there was olive oil, there was the olive branch too, peace, the wisdom of a peaceful society was blessed. And so the townsfolk decided that Athena would be the one to name Athens. You can see the link there. But this is happening in our sky on this Kazemi day. So the asteroid Athena will be in direct opposition with the planet Neptune. And so how I read that is that we've been this growing sort of like esoteric potential, or there's a different way of doing things. There's a way out of this particular road in life that it's growing my education in magic and the esoteric is growing. There's an olive branch from your 12th house, your unconscious reality. It's almost as if you might have great access to the goddess Athena on the 6th of September. So I would suggest, if you are that way inclined, to say a prayer to her and to ask her to show you where to go to next. Because I imagine that there's going to be a lot of emotion that's attached to your 6th house at this full moon. There might be some tears that need to be shed. And the week after, hopefully that reprieve can include a bit of an audience with the goddess Athena, the goddess of wisdom and of strategy. So maybe you can ask her for some active strategies to surmount some of the illusion that might be attached to some of the more imaginative parts of Neptune. I hope that makes sense. I pulled half a deck, and I'm going to stick with that. I don't know why I did that. I wonder why that is. I'm going to get 2 from this deck, and then I'm going to get that top one, I think. The Queen of Pentacles. Yeah, so I'll read them and I'll show you. There seemed to be a pathway. There seemed to be, a walkway that you were about to enter into. It seemed like the right way to go. It seemed almost too good to be true, but it seemed magic and blessed and a solution. There was a stage that was being set for some sort of celebration, some sort of like grand ritual coming together, But then that was sort of met with such a meeting of the minds and such a conflict that someone was using their intelligence to try and outsmart you. I think there seems like some sort of argument or something like that, and that had you sort of put tools down and sort of move away from it, be like I can't deal with this, actually, I'm not interested. What the Queen of Pentacles to me is speaking of is we can probably relate that to the asteroid series too. I hope that I've run out of sand, so I hope I'm not banging on too much. But let me just check the chart, because Ceres is in your 1st house in Libra. So Ceres was the goddess of agriculture, of growth, and Ceres talks to us about retrieval as well. The story of Ceres and Persephone and the journey to the underworld to collect her daughter, to bring her daughter back from the underworld, to collect what was rightfully hers. The winter that occurred, the seasons turning colder and the growth stopping on the earth as Ceres was gone. It's almost as if Ceres in this reading has said, yes, Athena, absolutely, but what about me? I'm in Libra right now. So at 23 degrees is Ceres, and she's forming trine with Vesta, and she's actually in a conjunction with the south lunar node. So we're sort of moving towards this eclipse in Libra that will be happening in the next couple of months. There's something that you're retrieving. So there's something that you're going to get back. I say daughter because that was the story between Ceres and Persephone. But there's something that belongs to you, Libra rising, that you're on the path to retrieving, to getting back. This emotional full moon in Pisces, this intuitive, psychic full moon in Pisces has brought me here to talk about Ceres. I haven't spoken about Ceres with anybody else. But you're bringing something back to land back home. This could be your sense of confidence in your magic. This could be your sense of confidence in your spirituality. This could be something to do as well with like your own resources. But somewhere along the line, something has gone missing, and you're on the path to bringing it back. This potentially could be a child of yours as well that you need, that you can kind of, if that language is hitting home for you, Libra rising, then and if that's been an issue for you as far as family, bringing something back that you can protect and you can care for once more. It doesn't have to be so literal as children, but that is the story of Ceres, who is in your first house. So this pathway and this stopgap, this altercation, has spurred you on to stand on your own 2 feet and to say to yourself, well, no, this is mine, and I'm going to get this. That's your reading, Libra rising. I hope that there was something in there for you, and I hope that we've been able to sort of harness that Pisces full moon vibe to talk about what we needed to. I love you very much. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, and I haven't already, I draw them. They're like this. You can head to umaruby.com and I can draw you up a chart and we can talk all about it, and I can post it to you after. If you would like to send me some tip money, that would be very much appreciated at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. And I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about the new moon in Virgo. So after the fact, after all of this investigation, and it'll be a great clarifying point because Mercury will station direct the day after. So everything that feels like crossed wires or crossed swords will become clear in 2 weeks. So if there's still things that you're unsure of, all will be revealed. Thank you very much for being here with me. I really, truthfully do appreciate your support so much. Much love to you, Libra rising. Bye. Hello, Aquarius rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the super blue full moon in Pisces. A lot to get through. This is happening on Thursday, the 31st of August at 11:37 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me, so at lunchtime. However, the sight of the moon the night before on the 30th and on the 31st, even the 1st, it's going to be massive. So the reason that this moon is called a supermoon is because there's 2 points in the moon's orbit around the Earth. One is really close, the closest to the Earth, and one is the furthest away, because rather than an exact circle, it's sort of like an elliptical shape that the moon takes around us. And so when it's really close to the Earth, it looks really big. So it's going to be a really kind of low-hanging, vibrant, juicy, big, bright moon. If that wasn't physically enough to sort of move people, as I'm sure that it probably will be, so just a little side note, might be worth laying low at this full moon in Pisces. I'm sort of suggesting that to everyone. Inner private rituals inside where the space is safe would be really awesome. Less interested in sort of getting out there and thrashing it out with everyone else, because everyone's going through this emotional wave. That's the supermoon part. It's called a blue moon because it's the second full moon in a month. So at the beginning of the month, the 2nd of August, we had the full moon in your first house, if you remember. And now it's the full moon in Pisces, which is your second house of your access to resources, your values, what you believe in, and how you use those things, your resources and your values, and spread them around and create a life for yourself. Structure and security and bounty. There's Mercury is also stationed retrograde, I will say, at the beginning of Virgo season. The very next day, Mercury stationed retrograde. So as far as crossed wires, as far as being really clear with our information, how that's getting put across and how we receive it too, there might be some room for misunderstanding. So I'm trying to be as articulate as I can be at this one. In astrology, the lunar perigee, which is the point where the moon is closest to the earth, is called Priapus, and the point where it's furthest away is called Lilith. So we've got some biblical stuff going on in Lilith, and we've got some ancient Greeky sort of stuff going on with Priapus. Now, the mythology of Priapus is that of the child of Dionysus / Bacchus, who was endowed beyond reasonable measure. If you wanted to have a laugh, look up Priapus and see what they look like, and you'll know what I'm talking about. They were worshipped for things like fertility and for growth and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of the mythology has them sort of yearning, though. There's something dissatisfied about Priapus. And so I bring this up because this is a full moon in your second house of money, coin, values, material abundance, all of that kind of stuff. And so there's possibly maybe a feeling of like just either like it's never enough, or there's been a sort of focus into that point of your life up until this point, and you're looking at everything and you've been working very hard and you've changed your life around a bit where you're sort of, you know, money is starting to flow and everything, and you've got Patsy Cline in the back of your head going, is that all there is? Or PJ Harvey, whichever version of the song you want to listen to. But is that all there is? I thought that if I focused my life this way, and I thought that if I was really productive, then I'd be happy. I'm not. That could be something that is sort of stirring your emotions, and that urgency to find relief as well is something that can be attached to Priapus, but like unsatiated relief, or unsatiated desire. So it's sort of like nothing's enough. I'm frustrated and I'm feeling a bit emotional about it because I've rerouted and I've worked really hard and I've turned this ship around. I've changed my life a bit in order to do this and to follow this path. And it's, you know, it's paying dividends, I guess, but like, who cares? Like, I'm really unsatisfied. That could be some emotions that are starting to show for you at this full moon. So hopefully by me being really articulate and naming them in that way, you can provide yourself with that understanding, that, and you can sort of think about maybe the mythology of Priapus too. You can really think about what they can represent, which is just insatiability or frustration. And then think about Pisces, and think about Pisces in like a shadow vibe. Or let me show you the card. So when we're talking major secrets in the tarot, Pisces is the moon card. So there's, you know, I'm looking at this card as I'm describing the story to you, Aquarius rising, but something's emerging from the water, right? Something is being moved beyond measure and coming to the surface. There's two versions of ourselves here. One is a wild, rabid, free beast who works on their animal instincts and wants to run off into the sunset. And the other one is a domesticated, staid, good boy, little puppy dog. In this version of the card, it's two beautiful, beautiful women with one's red-headed, one's brunette, and they're both wearing the masks of the animal. So it's sort of about the guise too, isn't it? The many faces that we harbour on the inside. And so I'm talking about this card in this way with Priapus in the back of my mind, that super moon, that sort of like vibrant moon where, I mean, hopefully it could be like a windfall for you. Maybe you're sort of, you can look around and be like, you know, counting the money in the money vault like Scrooge McDuck. Awesome, that's great. I don't feel that it's maybe not that. What I feel is that there's a sense of like, is that all there is? No. Damn it. So let's not try and chase that relief of the feeling. Let's actually sit in it. And if we can, if we've got the courage enough, let's like allow it to happen. Listen to that song, actually. It's called Is That All There Is? PJ Harvey does a beautiful cover of it from the Basquiat soundtrack, FYI. That's the moon I'd be urging you gently to just be mindful of what you're ingesting at this time too, because Pisces does have the aptitude to want to like disappear. You know, if you smoke a big doob or too many bongs, or you know, like to try and like dissociate, to get away. So everything that you ingest, do it with mindfulness and do it with intent. Do it to ask for, you know, some answers. In opposition to the moon, obviously, is the sun in Virgo, in your 8th house of the way in which our resources are intertwined with the other, the house of grief, the house of like major life lessons. Sometimes it can be the house where our resources are intertwined with somebody else's too. So things like inheritance and things like taxes and all of those, you know, fiscal interminglings with others happen in the 8th house too. You can see that that's all stuff that we'd much rather not talk about. That's probably a good way to describe the 8th house. However, so Mercury is in there, retrograde. There's things to sort of go over and sort through. Perhaps there's been some misunderstandings in those topics for you as well. Things that need to be sort of like shaken off and refined and really gone over. And you know, you might be reluctant to do so because it's a full moon and you're like, no, I'm just wiped. I just want to pop a champagne, which you can, but just do it with intent, remember. What I wanted to talk about was maybe also the week after this full moon, though, because I think that there's going to be some sort of clarity, some aha moments. Now, I don't give horoscopes every week, so maybe use this as a marker point. So yes, okay, that's the full moon astrology. Now let's go to the week after, when Mercury, who is stationed retrograde, will have joined up with the sun, forming another cazimi, which means a sort of like moment of clarity. So perhaps there'll be some breakthroughs in terms of your responsibilities financially to other people, or their responsibilities to yours, you know, working with grief, working with loss, that sort of stuff. Also, the asteroid Athena will have formed an exact opposition with the planet Neptune. So Neptune is in Pisces, so we'll be with this moon. The moon will go over to Neptune on the 1st of September, I think. So again, just be mindful with what you're ingesting. But for the purposes of this conversation, Neptune is the King of Cups, okay? So the King of the Sea, the King of the unknown, the hidden, the master of all of that kind of beautiful, magical potential. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and strategy. So for this purposes, we're talking about the Queen of Swords here. Now, there's a mythology around the naming of Athens. I've brought it up for everyone. I think it's an interesting story. I'll paraphrase. Long story short, the ancient Greeks were trying to decide what to name their township. There was a competition or a bet between Neptune and Athena as to who would win out and who the town would be named after. Neptune banged down their trident, and a geyser of water emerged from the town square. People rejoiced until they realized it was salt water. So maybe it wasn't all that they had thought that it was. Athena planted a seed, and from that seed grew an olive tree. And so, of course, food, oil, the proverbial olive branch, peace. If Athena was the goddess of wisdom and of strategy in war, I think one of her major strategies would be that of finding peace, right? Putting things to rest. So, of course, everyone was like, Athena for the win. Athens was named. There's your paraphrased mythology. There's your paraphrased fable. What I'm looking at is an exact opposition with Neptune in your 2nd house of your resources, your money, your talents. This has been a journey since 2012. So Neptune is very slow. You won't always feel it, but there's something about the possibilities of what you could do for a living, or what you could do, that's bigger than what you thought that you might be able to do. There could have been some red herrings in there too, as far as, following this impulse, that impulse, and sometimes realizing that it was just a geyser of salt water. What's happening now is this direct opposition with Athena in your 8th house of grief and other people's resources. That is an olive branch. So is there something that you're learning in your 8th house that is informing, in fact, some of your wider possibilities in how you're going to take care of yourself? Is there wisdom that's being handed down to you that you can take with you and grow your own olive tree? I'm pressing this point because I just love the coincidence, because it's Neptune in Pisces, water, and Athena in Virgo, which is grounding and reality. I think Virgo would be one of the signs that would know how to plant. In tarot, we talk about the pentacles with the earth signs. So that's what I wanted to say about that, Aquarius. I think that there might be something further to your growth that has something to do with your 8th house and what you're learning through trial and error at the moment because of Mercury. There is things that need to be gone over and lists to be made and conversations to be had and arguments to be had and all of that kind of thing. But somewhere in there is some wisdom that you can take and you can inform your 2nd house, which actually might even benefit some of these more magical ideas about how you're going to structure your life and what your values are and how you're going to create resources for yourself. It might be like being able to aid that and then get you out of this mentality of like, oh, is that all there is? Like, oh, I'm so sick of working. I hate busting my hump like this because the fruits of my labor are looking pretty abundant, but I actually can't give a shit about them right now because there's something in me that I'm just not feeling satisfied, and I wish that I could feel satisfied, but it's been a long time since I've felt satisfied, and so now I've cracked the shits. That could be how it's playing out for you, babe. Okay. That 7 of Swords card has come out again, Aquarius, and so is also the 5 of Swords. So these are both your vibes. We're into sort of intellectual territory now. We're into messages of the mind. Also, I have this Page of Cups here. So water, emotion, offer. The page is someone who's kind of quite sort of maybe like hopeful and demonstrative with their offer of emotion, their offer of emotional connection, we'll put it that way. But then we come across these swords, and so there's been some sort of like mismatch of the mind. Remember, the 5 of Swords is that like tools down moment where you're like, actually, I'm not interested in arguing about this anymore. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm fed up. Like, it's not worth it to continually fight with you on this. And then the 7 of Swords, remember from the last reading, it's like a lie. It's like it's an untruth. It's like a deception here. So, I mean, this could be separate to what we're sort of discussing here with your resources, but maybe not. Like there's something, this could be, there's something that you're kind of reconciling at this time too, which might be sort of adding to your like frustration of like, well, money is not enough. I couldn't give a shit about like having lots of money now because that's proven to be a red herring. That's not going to make me happy. And this could have been some sort of like offering of like, let's start up something, or let's you and I, we're connecting on this. Let's build this together. But it's just proven just to be too sharp. I will remind you that the 5 of Swords and the 7 of Swords are both Aquarian cards. So you're quite good at this sort of understanding of life. It's not easy to sort of bullshit you, Aquarius rising. So like message is trust the old intuition on this one and have a think about who this Page of Cups is, who is making this offer that at this juncture, you're sort of like, actually, like, what is it? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. I said fool instead of the other word, but you know what I mean. That could be how you're feeling as well. And that could be having you in this place of like, well, I was working towards this, and so we could do this, but now I don't even want to do that anymore. So now what am I going to do? Take the potential offer of wisdom from your 8th house. If there's lessons you're learning around grief and around sort of like, you know, the more intense bonds of life, the contracts that we do sign to one another, and you're learning about the intensity of that, and you're learning about your aptitude for how intense those things go, and you're not wanting to accept anything less, then maybe that's what's going on. There you go. I hope that was a good one, Aquarius rising. My voice is going because I've been trying to be articulate, but I've been not working from my belly. I've been working from my throat. Isn't that funny? Anyhow, I love you. If I've not read your birth chart before, they look like this. Head to umaruby.com and I'll draw you one up. I'll read it for you and then post it to you. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby. They're always very much appreciated, especially during these trying times. And I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about the new moon in Virgo. So this is going to be a dark night where we get to reassess how we're going to incorporate our resources with another moving forward. So we'll talk about that then, Aquarius rising. I love you heaps. You take care. Bye. Hello, Gemini rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the super blue full moon in Pisces. This is happening on the 31st of August at 11:37 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me, so just before lunchtime. However, if you pop out and have a look at the moon on the 30th, the night before, or the night of the 31st, it's going to be massive. Like literally, it's going to be huge. This is a supermoon because on the moon's orbit around the Earth, there are 2 points. There's one point where it's closest and one point where it's furthest away, because it travels in like an ellipse rather than an exact round circle. And so when the moon is closest to the Earth, it's a supermoon. This is a super full moon in Pisces. So this one is going to pack an emotional punch. It's going to be really massive. And there might be some things that you are feeling in the sense of like trying to find some sense of relief. There might be some urgency around relief that you just can't put your finger on, and you're almost maybe willing the tears to come or willing something to happen that hasn't been able to happen, and you can feel like the pressure rising. So they're called the lunar perigee and the lunar apogee in astronomical language, that point of closeness and further away. In astrology, the point that's closest is called Priapus, and the point that's furthest away is called Lilith. So I've got some biblical stuff to talk about with Lilith, but that will be for another time. And we've got some Greek stuff or Roman stuff, because they are interchangeable. They borrowed a lot from the Greeks, the Romans, just in the way of the mythology of the Priapus placement, the point where the moon is closest to the Earth. It's engorged in size. It's large. It's really big. I'm giggling because if you Google pictures of Priapus, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So do that, and then we can talk about the mythology of the character who was the child of Bacchus/Dionysus and who was finding it really difficult to gain satisfaction. They were endowed with a gift, but their insatiability, their desire, their animal cravings were never really satiated. And there was a lot of like false starts and missteps with Priapus. And if we look at it in terms of astrology and how that can show up for us, with a full moon, you can see that there's sort of this like craving for some form of release that is kind of hard to ascertain or hard to get at. And so with Pisces, there might be a compulsion to self-medicate in some way. And that's, completely up to you. That's fine. We all have different systems of getting by and regulating ourselves. If you're merely looking for a sense of relief, you won't find it. That's probably a bit of a blunt way to say it. But if you're going to, open a case of wine and drink your sorrows away, you won't at this full moon. In fact, it will probably just heighten them and make things worse and make you a bit sadder. And that's counterintuitive, because then you also have the physical ailments of drinking too much and the physicality of like, F my life up, I've pissed my life up the wall. So I don't want that for you, Gemini rising. And because it's also, one, it's not the truth. You have not pissed your life up the wall. You're actually at a really pivotal point in your life now that's really exciting. But two, this is how we can kind of like use the astrology and use the mythology as ways to kind of help give our lives a little bit of context that we might need at this time. Pisces for you rules your 10th house, Gemini rising, which is where we're most publicly perceived. It's the most visible part of our chart, and it has a lot to do with our career and what we wish to leave behind. So when you think about those topics, and normally with Pisces, there's a grand intuitive prowess there. There's a great, psychic abilities. There's, depending on what planets you have in Pisces too, there might be extra emphasis on Pisces for you. This full moon, this super moon, it just feels to me like there's sort of this growing sense of like wanting to release or wanting to feel something after maybe not being able to for a long time, that won't be cured by smoking too many bongs or, going out and getting effed up on whatever amount of drugs you want to take, which I'm not, no judgment. Like, I love to party, but like at this time, do it with intent. Do it with a mindfulness and do it with like ask the question. Don't do it to relieve the pressure or the anxiety or the ill feelings, because it won't work. Sorry. Also Saturn, also boundary, restriction. There's lessons here that we're learning, that we will be learning over the next 2 years or so, 2 and a bit years, about the sort of container that we need in order to live out our Piscean attributes to their fullest potential. Saturn takes 30 years to go around the zodiac. So this is sort of like, this is a time, isn't it? Depend on how old you are. Maybe you're experiencing your Saturn return too, which is about sort of coming back into a sense of restriction and obligation and sort of learning the boundary of life, the container, which of course can be as wide or as narrow as you want it to be. Isn't to say there's one size fits all. There absolutely is not. We all have different containers in life and different boundaries. But yeah, this is a very public moon. It's going to be massive. There's going to be lots of extra staff on at police stations and at hospitals. So if you can at all bear it, stay in for the weekend. I would really recommend that you do things that are sort of contained in some way with safety. It might not be the best weekend for partying at all, that's for sure. It could be the best weekend to commune and to get together and to rediscover intimacy. But on the public side of life, as this is in your 10th house, I just have a feeling that there might be some, too many tears shed or some sort of like emotional overdrive that occurs that you can't contain anymore, or that horrible feeling of like just looking for relief and looking for release and just never getting it. That's what Priapus is here to teach us. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Priapus, Priapussy, I said before in another reading, which is funny. And if you are into drag, then that's a drag name for you, Priapussy. Anyhow, tra-la-la-la-la. So that's going on with the moon, and it's constructive. And also we must remember that the moon loves it in Pisces. In tarot, the moon card is the Pisces card. So we do see that already. There's something coming, being dredged up from the underworld by the full moon. We know that the moon moves the tides. It has an effect over our emotional selves. So we can work with that vibe, can't we? We can really kind of appreciate that. We must give it its due respect as well, because there's a wolf and a dog inside of all of us. There's a wild animal and there's a good boy, good girl. Understand? And that's not to say that you've got to be a good boy and a good girl at all, but it's just to sort of be like, what's being unleashed at you at this time, especially because Mercury, the planet of communication and messages shared back and forth, has station retrograde, is going to F things up and get in the way of communications, get in the way of our message getting out there. I'm fingers crossed that these horoscopes work, because they might not, and that's okay. I'll have to roll with it. All of this is like fertile ground for misunderstanding and for unleashing where is maybe not necessary, not needed. There is quite a lovely formation happening with your first house around this full moon, and actually probably the week after as well. So you might consider this horoscope a 2-weeker. So I'll talk about that's the full moon stuff. So just go gently, journey with intent, I think is what I'll say, as far as like, expanding your mind. If you are that way inclined, like do it with intent. Don't do it recreationally. It's not going to work. The other thing that we're going to talk about is when Mercury retrograde joins up the sun and is cazimi with the sun. This is your 4th house. This is your home, your roots, your ancestry, your privacy. These are the relationships that you might be in agitation with at the moment. There might be arguments with either your parents or your kids or your brothers or sisters, or, like there might be some like crossed wires going on. You might be sort of all eyes on the prize, wanting to get out there and go and do it. They might be like, no. And you might be like, why? That might be going on as well at this full moon. And so you don't argue about it. Remember, Mercury rules your sign, Gemini. So you've got to work with the energy of Mercury. You've got to work with what it's serving you up. And so right now, use Virgo season as the time to with a fine-tooth comb and with clarity and with kindness, communicate with people in your 4th house of home and roots and privacy and ancestry. Talk to them. Talk to them about who you are. Talk to them about who you're becoming. Talk to them about the journey there and what you need, what's required of you and them to get you there. And be articulate and listen to what they're saying to you. If there's misunderstandings, ask for clarification. That's another great way to work with this. The asteroid Vesta is in Gemini at this time at 25 degrees. So Vesta, for the purposes of this reading, I'm going to show you the Queen of Wands, because it's just a nice like visual sort of reference. Also, the wands are fire. Vesta is the priestess of the sacred flame. So Vesta is where we ritualize our life and where we cast our spells out and where we use our inner flame. And this could be in terms of our sexuality, if that's something that you have a relationship with. We use this energy as a source of massive healing and of purification. So some of the mythology attached to Vesta, obviously in the Roman Empire, there was the Vestal Virgins, so they devoted their chastity to Vesta and kept the flame in the chapels alive. What predated that, though, was the Greek god Hestia, and there were many sex sects. Try and get your tongue around that one. Oh, anyway, continue. Sorry, I'm blushing now. There were many sacred rituals, sacred priestesshoods that would make love to the soldiers of war returning home. They would make love to these people to cleanse them of the horrors of war. They would use their sacred sexuality to do so. So sexuality is interchangeable with magic as far as I can see it. If you're not feeling especially in touch with your sexuality, that's absolutely your prerogative. And if that's not a relationship that you have at all, that's also your prerogative. If we can kind of overlay those things as far as like that sort of like core essence, that flame, that fire, that is something that is speaking to the planet Neptune in your 10th house of your career, your public self, your aspirations, where you're going. Neptune, for the purposes of this reading, is the King of Cups. So the one that brings magic, brings illusion, brings the unknowable, psychic connection. There's a square going on between the Queen of Wands and the King of Cups. So we can sort of, that's one relationship that's going on. When Mercury is cazimi with the Sun on the 6th of September, which means that there'll be an exact conjunction, there'll be a moment of clarity around your 4th house, around your ancestral world, your relationship with parents and family and children and lovers, people that you share a home with. That moment of clarity happens on the same day as Athena, the asteroid. For these purposes, we'll talk about the Queen of Swords, who is the goddess of wisdom and of strategy. And so they will be forming an exact square with Vesta too. And so there'll be an opposition between Neptune and Athena squaring with Vesta. So I see this as your powers, your goddess is mediating a face-off between the more delusional aspirations in your 10th house and an opportunity for the olive branch to be handed over in your 4th house. The reason I say that is because Athena is the goddess of wisdom and strategy. She's also the reason that Athens is called Athens. The mythology goes that there was a contest between Neptune and Athena as to who the township would be named after. And Neptune slammed their trident into the ground and they revealed a fount of salt water. And the township initially rejoiced, but then realized that it was salt water, so fairly worthless, living surrounded by that. And Athena planted a seed, and from that grew an olive tree. And so they could eat, they could have oil, they could extend the olive branch. And this is what I'm getting at here. So that's the mythology of Athena and Poseidon, but it's actually happening in the stratosphere the week after this full moon, on the day of the Mercury cazimi. And you've got a part to play in this, Gemini, because Vesta is there and it's nearly exact, like that's pretty spot on, this square. So when it comes to your Queen of Fire, when it comes to your devotion to your either sacred sexuality, your magic, your sacred, like femininity is maybe something that we could talk about here if that's a binary that you fit into. But this sort of feeling of like power that comes from the seductive parts of you, or that comes from the yielding parts of you, the gentle parts of you. This is going to aid your 10th house, your career, where you're going, and grow that olive branch in your 4th house, your place of ancestry. As much as we sort of have been using a lot of this difficult language for the moon, I think that this is going to be really remarkable for you, Gemini rising. I really do. I think that something is going to shift here, and there's going to be some great conversations that you can look forward to. So work with it, use it. Google Priapus if you wanted to have a giggle, but then also look at those images and feel that sort of like dissatisfaction, that sort of like relentless sort of hunger for something unattainable. And have a little Google, a little investigation with Vesta or Hestia and learn about them too, because at the moment, this is where we're working with that energy right now for you, Gemini rising. The goddess of the sacred flames come back. How are you going to welcome her in? That's your reading, and I've looked at my sand, and for whatever reason, it's not moved a muscle. Oh, there it goes. You get another 15 minutes. No, you don't actually. Sorry. I've been chewing your ear off. Isn't that funny? Time stopped for a moment for you and I, Gemini rising. I hope it was worth it. Head to umaruby.com. If you've not had your birth chart read by me already, they look like this. I'll draw it up for you, read it for you via Zoom, and then post it to you so you've got the hard copy. You can book that at umaruby.com. You can tip me at buymeacoffee.com/umaruby, and I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about the new moon in Virgo, so a chance to reflect and to cool and to grow in our 4th house. And Mercury will have stationed direct too, so any misunderstandings will have that ability to move forward and clarify with Mercury's stationing direct and moving ahead, moving on through. So that's it. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Love you heaps, Gemini rising. Take care. Full moon blessings.